Oh, it's been a while. Back in the saddle here. Megan, how are you today?
I'm good. We'll see if I remember how to do this.
Yeah, right? Summertime. That's what I'd like to start with before we get started. We were kind of, yeah, let's, where to start with this? I would say, okay, so we had an event planned, as
Mm,
listeners of the show may or may not know, because we were going to do something for like a back to school thing. But I'll tell you, like August, I was kind of reflecting on it this morning. I'm like, because you had your 2 week vacation, and I had
hmm
like three intervals of vacationing, and I'm pretty sure like you were gone while I was here and vice versa. So there's about a 5 week period where there was like very little contact just
Yeah.
from like you doing holidaying and then that happens during summertime, and then before we know it, it's like 4 days out from this event, and we're kind of like, I've been like, I think we kind of agreed, just like both our heads aren't necessarily in it, and it's always there to do or to circle back to at some point. So, and then we're like, well,
hmm
let's do some podcasting, and then even that we were going to do our usual like the 5 episodes, like Mind Shift Monday and all that, and then I just started. I'm like, you know what? Let's just like have a conversation. We haven't done that in ages either, so I think since like episode 0 when we did like the like our origin stories, we traded off on that, and
Yeah.
that was in like early February. So yeah, it'll be cool just to have like
A
a
check-in?
conversation. Yeah, check in
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, well, just yeah, how was your So we did a few episodes back in July, but yeah, how was like your guys' summer? What kind of stuff was coming up for you? How are you feeling today? Just get the whole thing a check in from you.
Yeah, summer was good. I feel like we're always in a constant state of flux or change. And maybe that's just how it goes when you have kids, because you're always sort of like going into another season with kids as they grow up, right? And so we started the summer with potty training. So that was like a big new season and a big transition. And now we're ending the summer with my eldest stepson going off to college. So that's another sort of big change. And we've been helping to prepare for that. And that brings its own dynamics with co parenting and that whole thing. Had some vacation in there, which was good vacation. It was nice to get back home and connect with my family, but also really nice to have a staycation on the end of it,
Mm.
which is really like my sweet spot. Just doing nothing is where I thrive.
I love it.
Being lazy, having no
Yeah.
schedule, that was much more restorative. But it was nice to get like the to-do list of like, yeah, I got to get home and do the kind of obligatory visiting.
Obligatory. Yeah. Yeah.
Obligatory, yeah.
Yeah.
It does feel a bit obligatory for me when I'm like really introverted, but I have a huge
Mm.
family.
Right.
And now we're already at September.
Yes. And it had been a while since you guys had been on any kind of trip, right? Like any kind of
Yeah.
road trip. I mean, obviously with COVID, I think you're not unique in that sense, but yeah, you guys hadn't really had a chance to go to back to BC or anything
No, the
very,
last time we were in BC was like 2 years ago.
yeah, right? So
Mm.
a lot changes, especially when you have a young family. Like you say, there is
Mhm.
like every 3 months, it's like a different cycle or different phase. And I'm
Yeah.
just thinking about this now because it's like, okay, so on one hand, you're talking potty training. On the other hand, there's a kid going off to college. So it's just like these
No.
polar opposites in a lot of way. Like energetically, there's like
Yeah.
these two young girls, twin girls. And then, there's the older sons that are, going off to college and crazy stuff. So that's
Yeah.
quite the contrast, or, however it would be
Yeah.
like energetically, I can imagine, right?
Yeah. I've always described it like that to people when they ask me like how old our kids are. I'm like, oh, 15 and 18 and 2. It's like
Yeah.
opposite ends of the spectrum,
Yeah.
which there's like so many pros to that, some cons to it for sure. But anytime we're like grieving our kids getting older, like on the one hand, we like still have these like little kids that are young and keeping mostly my husband young.
Yeah. 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 Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Oh, yes. So
And
good.
we get to like, or he, I guess, gets to like re-experience those things that he hasn't done in so long with the boys. Like the other sort of first was the girls had their first ever birthday party. Was that last weekend? So yeah, he got to like do the young kids' birthday party like all over again, right? He
Yeah.
hasn't done
Yeah.
that in probably 15 years. And so
For
that was
sure.
fun and sort of like nostalgic for him because I wasn't there, but he got to go and do it.
which is really cool. And you said like because you had something that was scheduled well ahead of time before this birthday came up, so you
Yeah.
had this, mixed emotions of missing. On one hand, there's like the I'm assuming like mom guilt or something along those, some
Yeah.
variation of that
Oh
where you don't
yeah.
get to be there. Yet it opened up the opportunity for your husband to go and do it. So there was like it was a good balance there by the sounds of it.
Yeah, like initially the week before the party, I was super emotional about it. Like even got teary about it. Like, oh, I can't believe I'm gonna miss this big sort of like milestone birthday party. And it was even more special because it was Frozen theme and they're just obsessed with Frozen. And Elsa's making an appearance, and I just really wanted to see their reaction. So that was like my initial like emotional response. And then it turned into, well, what's everybody else gonna think? They're gonna like think that I'm like an uninvolved parent, that I'm not coming to
Mm.
this birthday party.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was like, oh God, they're gonna judge me. They don't even know me. So I had to work through like a couple different
Couple
emotional
things. Yeah.
reactions.
Yes.
Um, I was going to actually like send a text to be like, oh, I'm not going to be the one that's going to be there. My husband's going to come, to like explain myself. Then I was like, no, 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 I don't. First of all, I need to explain myself to perfect strangers. And let's stop this societal expectation that it's the mom that needs to take everybody to the birthday party. Like,
Mm.
why can't my husband take them to the princess birthday party?
Hell
So
yeah.
I didn't send the text. Like I confirmed we would attend, but I didn't say that it was my husband coming. It was so funny because when he sent me pictures from the party, lots of dads were there. So
There
I
you
was,
go.
oh my gosh, I just made this whole scenario up for myself in my head, right? So I was good once they were actually there. Like the day of the party, I wasn't sad or anything, and I called the girls in the morning. So luckily, I had time to work through all of that.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. Especially in the nature of what you were doing for the weekend. And I wanted to actually, you mentioned, you're like, this is where I thrive, like solitude, and like you mentioned the word lazy. So I
Mhm.
did like the yeah, what was it? There was a great quote I heard on a podcast the other night. It was like, lazy has this connotation of there's like a judgment to it,
Mm.
generally speaking, right? I get the impression it's not the same for you, but like when I think of lazy, I put like some judgment on it, or I have this like picture of me, just not doing anything. I judge myself. It's like relaxation with judgment attached to it, right? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
yeah,
whereas you like, I get the impression you wear that badge proudly. You're like, yeah,
I
whatever.
do.
I was
Yeah,
lazy.
yeah,
I'm okay with that, which is
yeah,
refreshing. So that's
yeah.
cool. One of the other things that came up too is like I'm thinking of like societal expectations, and you mentioned like the husband coming, especially the princess party, right? Kind of breaking some old ideas there, which is awesome. The other expectation that I am still working through, and I'm wondering what you thought because it ties in what you're saying, is like the idea that you have to, you can't just say I'm not going to be there. It's always like I'm not going to be there because, and then there's either like this like half truth or you're not like I feel like I don't fully disclose or like and I'm not used to just saying, "Hey, I'm not going to be there." And now,
Hmm.
so as a result, a lot of the friends that I have that know that about me, when I just say that, they're like, "Okay, well, why?" And I'm just like, "Oh," and then immediately it challenges that. I was like, "Oh, now I got to tell them because I have blah, 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 blah." Right.
Yeah.
So I always had that growing up. It's polite to be like, "I'm not going to be there because," and then give a reason because then it's like not hurting the person's feelings or
Hmm.
it's it doesn't leave anything wondering. So how has that how has that been in your life, and was that present in your childhood as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's something that I've worked on a lot throughout the years. And a regular theme with the clients that I work with is working on the need to not explain, not apologize, and not meet other people's expectations. And it's so freeing for me. I mean, I feel like I got really good at it quite a long ways ago in terms of just friends was like the first place I had to start. If I didn't want to go to something, not being like, oh, I don't want to come because I'm sick or like lying about it. Now it's just like, oh, that sounds great, but I'm gonna pass. And if people ask why, I'm like, because I just don't want to. And it's funny
Nice.
because it's not my uncomfortableness that I notice in that situation, it's the other person. Like they don't know how to take the response of I don't want to
Mm.
because they haven't worked through whatever's going on for them and what that means for them. Like they somehow internalize me not wanting to attend their invitation as like a slight against them. It's like, no, I just
Yeah,
literally just don't want to come. It has nothing to do with you. I just don't want to come for
totally.
whatever or whatever reason that I do have, but I just don't feel the need to explain it to you. When people finally let go of that need to explain, everybody uses the word free. They're like, I feel so free,
Mm.
feel so much lighter. And I
Mm-hmm.
just used it a couple minutes ago. It's like this weight gets lifted off of you
Yeah.
to stop over processing. Like, what's the excuse I'm going to
Yeah.
use?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
reason I'm going to give that's going to be good enough for me to not have to meet the expectation or take the invite, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then it's like, and then for me, I start like, yeah, when you go into that mode, I'm like, hey, what's going to be like the softest or like the one that like is so neutral that it won't hurt their feelings or whatever. And, just to elaborate on that thought, even, it's the people that still get that kind of like, well, why are you so, kind of judgy about why you're not showing up and why you're not giving a reason.
Mm.
I find those are also the people that when you do show up and then you go to leave, they're like, oh, what, you're gonna leave so early? Like it's never quite good enough, regardless if you go or don't
Yeah.
go. You know what I mean? So I'm
Mhm.
thinking of a few people right off the bat that like, yeah, for sure, those are the people that really like. I hate using the word trigger all the time, but like trigger that side of me. And then when I
Mm.
do go, it's like even if I'm only there for whatever a couple of hours, then it's just like, oh, what you got something better to do now? Like why are you going so soon? So it's just funny. It's like that mentality also, it's just
Mhm.
never good enough regardless, right? Which has nothing to do with me at that point. But so
Mhm.
kind of interesting thoughts.
Yeah.
Cool. I have we're talking seasons and change and stuff. I was like bringing this up, and actually it was my brother that pointed out to me that, and it resonated with me a lot. Is like September for me is like the true New Year's. Like New
Oh
Year's
yeah.
Eve is New Year's, but like September feels like New Year's because like it's back to school. It's the end of summer. Like the end of
Yeah.
summer is like the end of like being out there and just being able to do whatever you want, and then September is like I generally start new activities. I'm like, okay, I think just the pattern that I had from childhood and even into like high school and early adulthood and college and such, September has always been like a new year for me, so I have that kind of that
Mhm.
feel to it. So I've started a few different things and all that. Do you get that vibe as well, or is New Year's and September's is kind of like is what it.
You know what? I again am like a bit of a oddball in that when if I want to start something, I just start it. I don't start it on a Monday. I don't start it in the new year. I don't start it in September. I just
Mm,
pick times that work well for me in where I'm at in my life. And so I let go of some of those like societal like markers for when's the good time to start something because it's never worked out well for me in the past. I'm a bit of a procrastinator sometimes, or I used to
mm,
be when I was like, I'm gonna start it in the new year, right? And so
yeah.
any type of behavior change that I've had to take on, I'm like, I'm gonna start it on a Wednesday. Like when I commit to it, I commit to it. And so
Yeah.
even though right now in our family, like yeah, we are ramping up for back to school, it just feels like another day in some way to like
Mm.
get back into routine.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think for me, like, I don't necessarily find that it's like societal pressure, but I do like intervals and parameters and so forth.
Yeah,
Like I like 30-day challenges and things of that
sure.
nature, right?
Hmm.
And kind of theming it towards whatever the seasons are doing and all that sort of thing. So I like to use yeah, I find that I'm more creative when I have parameters, if that makes sense. Like when
Sure.
there's already some limitations and within those limitations is where I feel safe or comfortable creating. So that's how I
Yeah.
look at it more than like oh, there is a bit of like an echo effect from like, oh, September back to school. I gotta, here we go, the next phase of my life kind of thing. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of that in there, but
Yeah.
I just like, same thing like full moon is out. Oh, what are my intentions for the full? You know what I mean? I like all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Well, and some people do really well with like the analogy of it or the visualization of it, meaning like, it's fall, leaves are changing, and then spring is like regrowth or
Totally.
rebirth, right? And so I think it's about finding those sort of external cues that help you do well with change. Just knowing my personality type, I've tended to use those things again as like a procrastination, right? Like
Yeah.
not gonna start the I'm not gonna start the exercise routine until the new year. And then it's
Mm.
kind of like bit me in the butt on the other side of it. So because I
Mm-hmm.
know I have that tendency to use those markers as an excuse, I don't usually do well with them. I have to be like, no, it's tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. If I'm gonna do it, I'm doing it right now.
I'm doing it right
Yeah.
now.
Um, So what is like? What do you think? What have you identified is some of the reasoning behind procrastination, or do you is like it? And I guess same part of that is like, do you find does it kind of tie in with like the idea of like finding the perfect time? Like, or is and then when you or say for example, if you're going to start something on January 1st,
Hmm.
is there like accumulation of pressure between the conversation we're having now and January 1st that like
Oh, for
what is it how
sure.
does it show up for you?
I don't know if I'm answering your question properly, but what I will say is I don't believe that there's ever a perfect time to do anything.
No, I get that, but what I mean is like when you have that procrastination like feeling showing up because you have
Yeah.
identified with that. I'm just asking more about like that when that does show up. What does it feel like? Does it feel like you?
Yeah, I think there's like some anxiety there,
Mm-hmm.
but also like anytime when I reflect back that I've procrastinated on something, it's usually because I'm not making a choice that aligns with my values.
Oh, okay.
Like I'm
Yeah.
making the choice to start the diet, do this, do that for a reason that does not align with my values. And so just using the diet example, because it's such a common one, right? Like I'm going
Sure.
to start a diet in the new year. Losing 10 pounds is not actually getting me to the person that I want to be.
Mm.
I
Mm.
think it does. I used to think it would be, right? If I was 10 pounds lighter, then maybe I would be happier. But research and my own research has shown over time that the 10 pounds has never made me happier. What I do know between about healthier meal choices and things like that is that it promotes better sleep for me, which promotes better mental health for me. And so if I make meal choices that are quote healthier based on who I want to be as a person in terms of my mood and my sleep habits, I'm not going to procrastinate on that. But if I tie it to like, I want to lose 10 pounds, I will procrastinate on that.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a great distinction. Yeah, I love that. It actually gives me another subject we can go into here.
You're like
Um,
making notes as I talk. I'm like, oh
yeah.
God, is he quoting me?
Yeah, yeah, direct quote. No, I like this because this is showing up a lot in my life now. And you know, we've talked about it before. Like I have this, you know, the achiever, the doer energy, and trying to reconcile that and get to the point where I'm enjoying the process versus just like, you know, it's there's a guy that was in my coaching group that suggested it's like if you're on a hike and you're going to the top of the mountain and you just like plow a trail and you're not even looking around and you get to the top of the hill and you kind of get like this initial like that was fun, what a great view, and then you realize that you missed out on so much on the way up like because you just had
Mm-hmm.
blinders on. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just trying to enjoy the hike up the way and then it'll have so much more depth when I get to the top. Yeah, so that was a good comparison. So you know I was we were talking with well, actually one of my coaches about you know the difference between like a objective goal and a subjective goal, and you illustrated it there, an objective goal of like I want to lose 10 pounds versus the subjective goal, which is like when I eat healthier that helps my sleep, my mental health, yada yada. So it's yeah, I just love that distinction too, and that's worth talking about because there is a lot of, and you know, some of the earlier talk that we had about societal pressures that
Mm-hmm.
champions these objective goals, right?
Yeah.
Which can often be like a little bit arbitrary, like where does
Mhm.
10 pound, you know what I mean? Where does 10 pounds come from, right? Or you
Yeah.
know, just to keep up with your. So yeah, what's how has that been for you, or have you always been more of a subjective goal person,
No.
or okay, yeah, yeah,
No.
no,
I used
yeah,
to very much be like an objective goal person. Like when I get here, yeah, when I
yes.
lose the 10 pounds, when I accomplish this career goal, when I do this, do that. And again, like looking back on those times and really trying to see me as like a whole picture, like was I happy or was I not happy? That end goal, that objective goal didn't really change my actual like perception of how happy I was in life.
Mm,
And there's been like lots of times where I'm like, yeah, sure, could I lose 10 pounds? Would I be a bit happier? And I'm legit like, no, I actually wouldn't be. Like I've been smaller than I am now. I've been bigger than I am now. And it has nothing to do with my sense of happiness. And so every time I make a choice, I try to be super conscious of being like, why am I making this choice? Is it getting me towards the person that I want to be? Does this align with my values? Or is this, yeah, more of like an objective goal?
mm-hmm.
And objective goals for me, not speaking for everybody else, but for me, tend to be a goal that somebody else has said that I should obtain.
Yes, the
Society,
should.
you probably should be
Yes.
a size 6 and not a
Should.
size 8,
Or you're
right?
supposed to be, or
Yeah,
yeah,
or you
that kind of.
probably should be a manager and not an assistant manager. But then when I
Yeah.
got to the manager, it's like, I don't want to do this. Like I just
Yeah.
got here and I'm not any happier.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. You know what ties in because we talking about like the diet thing is such a common one that people will be able to relate to. Also money, right? There's so many
Yeah.
stories of millionaires that are just miserable, right? And they haven't done the work and they thought that their whole like achievement mentality was like as soon as I get to this amount of money, I can relax. And it turns out to be exactly the opposite, right? Where there's just like
Yeah.
more stress, there's more things on the line, right? So yeah, that's a interesting you know, other perspective on it too. And that's like I kind of want to talk about like money stories, and because I know you and I had like similar upbringings and such like as far as like I don't want to speak for you, but I'll speak for me. For me, there was definitely some like scarce. I was raised in like a scarcity mindset, like there wasn't enough to go around, and
Yeah.
people that are richer, there was this idea that they had more than us, and there was only a certain amount to go around versus an abundance mindset that
Yeah.
developed since then.
Hmm.
So yeah, like the money story of that is same thing. And I've learned that over this year because it's like this year I've made the least amount of money that I have in a lot of ways. It's come my way in other ways, but me personally, as far as what I've quote unquote earned,
Hmm.
has been the least amount that I've earned. And honestly, it's like the best year I've ever had
Yeah.
mentally and even physically and everything else. So it's felt very freeing to remove like this collapsed distinction between like self-worth and money, or
Yeah.
confidence in money, and all these different things that I had personally tied up with my money story, and just being
Hmm.
freed of that, and then just realizing or having this like it's turned into this like faith-based or like assumption that the work that I am putting in right now will pay off. It's like the collaboration with the universe. Like you get what is it?
Yeah.
Get back. Yeah, get what you get. Thank you. Yeah. So that's So that's kind of how I'm feeling about it. Not take out the kind of.
Hmm.
That's how I am feeling about it right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your like? We talked about the diet thing, but how is it for? How is your like money stories these days, and
Yeah.
subject to what we're talking about?
Yeah, it's actually very similar. And I'm like in a phase of my life right now too, where I'm spending a lot of money, um, like willingly, but like just have a lot of money going out right now. And my viewpoint on money has changed like dramatically to how I used to function even 5, 10 years ago. It was very much like a poor man's mindset. Even when I had money, I pretended like I didn't have money and I was always afraid to spend money because I didn't feel like I would get that money back. Whereas now I almost have like an open hand mindset where I know that if I keep a closed fist, I also can't then open my hand to receive anything. Like, sure, I might not
Mm.
let go of anything, but I also can't grab onto anything. So I
Hmm.
have that like closed fist visualization when I do spend money or let go of money to know that I have to keep my hand open if I'm going to receive something. And I know now that I have the resiliency and even the work ethic to like always be okay. Whereas when I was younger and just getting into the workforce, I was a bit more scared. I didn't trust my abilities to maybe make money. I didn't trust in my knowledge and what I had to offer people, more so just because I was still a bit weak in my self-esteem at that point in time. Whereas
Mm.
now I really trust in my abilities to find money, to make money, to be resilient, be resourceful. And it's huge. Like it's just, I was just talking about this last weekend with a girlfriend actually, how I just spent like a huge chunk of money on something and I was like, the person I was 5 years ago would have never, like, I would have never, ever taken any type of risk or gamble that was not 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and that's huge, right? So, and that's great to be able to reflect back on that. I'm sure that feels very freeing to look back on. And I love
Yeah.
the analogy or the comparison. Yeah, the closed fist. Sure, there's nothing going out, but then you can't allow anything to come in either. So that's really
Mhm.
cool. I like that. Yeah, you know what? A lot of what I'm working on right now too is like I had a question posed to me, and this really ties into the objective versus subjective goals. It's like, what type of person do I need to become to be able to and then finish it, make X amount of money to be able to pay off my house in 3 years, to be able to help like 1,000 people. What kind of person
Hmm.
do I need? So then it's like feels a lot more empowering that way because it is. It's like, okay, well, what sort of things, what kind of inner work can I do? Or like then I was looking at money differently because like for example, I just joined a like a jujitsu club, and it's like
Hmm.
I wanted to do it my whole adult life, but I was always like, especially now because like I got my monthly bills way down. This was
Hmm.
going to like increase them fairly substantially from what what I am currently at. And the question was posed to me like, well, what if that money you're spending on this thing that you've wanted to do for like 20 years is
Hmm.
going to transform you into a person that can like earn that back tenfold because it's like this blind spot or this like
Yeah,
self-conscious area that you're developing, and then all of a sudden it's going to open you to all this other stuff. I was like,
totally.
yeah, I love that. So that's like that is the mindset shift that I'm practicing, and it feels so much
Yeah.
lighter and more expansive like to think of that versus another $150, and like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
now we're like what we're talking before. Oh, maybe in the new year. I kept putting it off, right? New year, and then to be like, well, now it's summertime. I'm gonna miss a bunch of classes, and then it's like September, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm doing it. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that you labeled it a blind spot because like money for me definitely and like my thought processes around money has been a blind spot for me for long, long periods of my time up until like most recently where I would yeah, like wait on something to spend the money and then the price increased or something, or I missed out on a huge opportunity, or it literally like impacted my mental health. Like for instance, when I had the girls, and went through that whole birthing experience, there was like so many opportunities to help myself. And I always saw it through a lens of money. Like
Mm.
one friend made a recommendation, like, well, maybe you should get a doula, like a doula can come and support you with your mental health, support you with your feeding, even help a bit around the house, do some meal making. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not going to pay for that. That's insane. Like, that's so much money. And now looking back on it, I'm like, if I could have changed that experience to be a more positive one, I would have paid anything. Like if I could go back in
Mm.
time and change that, I would
Yeah.
have paid anything to have changed that experience for myself. But I was so close-minded and so focused on the dollar amount of what that was
Mm.
going to cost, when in reality, it cost me years of anxiety. It cost me connection. It cost me time with my children. It cost me sleep. It cost me, my relationship in some ways. Like the actual repercussions of just not spending the money was like
So much.
tenfold, so
Right.
much more in
Yeah.
reality of what it cost me.
Right.
So when I talk about having more kids, now it's like, hell yeah, I'll hire a doula. Yeah, I'm gonna hire a housekeeper. Like, I have no problem spending the money now. And unfortunately, I had to learn the hard way though.
Yeah, yeah. And that's literally all that stuff that you mentioned is like you can't put
A
price tag
price on
on all
that.
that, right? And
Yeah.
like you say, learning the hard way, but now you've like energetically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all the above, learned the lesson. So safe to say that you won't make that mistake again,
Yeah,
right?
I
Or
hope not.
mistake, you know what I mean? Not necessarily mistake either. It's like it's learning, right? It's learning. Mistake seems so judgy.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's cool. Cool just to riff on some ideas. Those are all the notes I took while scribbling down while you were talking. So I'm like, anything else coming up for you that it's just cool to
Well, we
shoot the
didn't check in
breeze.
on your summer. What was going on with you? You're just asking
Yeah.
me questions.
Oh yeah, yeah. Boom. Yeah. Yeah. Like
So good at
putting on the
being the
spot.
host.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, summer was great. So I did like that Dry July challenge. So that was the first group that I've ever facilitated like that. Obviously, I've done like
Mm.
first day information and like orientation and stuff at my previous job, but nothing like this where it's like 100% me, my creation, my baby, right? So
Yeah.
that was really cool. And to get all the feedback from everybody and see them all interact, like on the Facebook group and start, getting into each other's lives. And there's some like friendships that have, came from that group. Bless you. Uh, that are just so it was so cool to see. It was like I felt like I imagined a proud papa would be. I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, it just blew my mind. It was so cool, and a lot of it, like, I just didn't go in with too many expectations. I was just kind of hoping that everybody would at least a few people would make it to the end, at least just to kind of get some feedback on the course. And I knew two or
Yeah.
three would definitely make it through. And like everybody made it through. And yeah, I think 4 of 6 completed everything. And then the other two are still kind of picking away at it. Although the moment's gone now, it's like a couple months later. And yeah, just everything about it was awesome. It was a good confidence booster for me. Um, and it was like something that took it out of my head, and it was like, okay, I'm able to do it now. It's out. It's getting good feedback. I got some awesome testimonials, really great testimonials.
Awesome.
And yeah, so now it's just like, so that was cool. And then right away, like August 1st, I went on my first trip. So it was like this, um, immersive month of Dry July where I was just like every day, like in this program and making sure everything was good. And, just because it's the first, I was very involved in it, of course.
Yeah.
And then right away it was almost like flipping, bless you again, the flipping it into like like visiting and holiday mode. So we called it Adventure August. So I was like August 1st, I went out and visited my cousin who I hadn't seen in a while on my dad's side. Um, then I went for my birthday, which was in mid-August. We went for a big camping trip, and then went and saw my mom at the end of the month. So that was yeah. One thing that came out of that was luckily I was ahead on all my podcasting, so I was able to release episodes, and I just hop on my phone for maybe 5-10 minutes a day and just clear up some emails. And other than that, just was like just taking time to visit and everything else, right? And for the most part, it felt good, but there was definitely some times where I feel guilty about or lazy. My definition of lazy versus yours, or I was just like, this is where I'm supposed to be like turning it up, like getting the momentum off this, So the old me would have been, I don't know, probably saying no to some of the trips, or and just be like, no, like, no, I have to keep this, this ship going. Like I got some momentum. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So it was like, it's been interesting to witness like both sides of it for me, because one part of me is like the old story is still feeling guilty, like, hey, you could have done more, like you shouldn't have traveled so much. And then the other side of me is like, shut up. It's telling that guy to shut up. Like, just, I got this. Like, it's all good. I'm allowed to, and it was worthwhile. It wasn't like I was just, I don't know. I can't even think of anything that would have made me feel this guilt, especially when I'm going to like visit my mom and things of this nature. That's all like great stuff to do. That's, filling her cup, filling my cup, and that sort of thing. So it's interesting to kind of watch that now.
Yeah.
I have the experience where I can like step back and watch the conflicting voices, right? The angel devil thing. I can kind of watch
Mhm.
them and be like the presence behind it. I'm like kind of the referee now. So that's good, because I used to listen to one or the other like way more than just like feeling into it and deciding that way. So that
Mhm.
was progress for sure. And then yeah, September now, like I said, I joined the mixed martial arts gym that's right down the road for me. So that's really cool. Excited about that. And like just humbling. Like there's like the awkwardity of beginning something, and it's like
Yeah.
the adult class, but the first two adults that showed up were like 18-year-old guys that looked like they were like 14. I'm like, is this like the adult class? They're like, yeah, yeah. I'm like, oh man, like I'm hoping not every, like they're great kids, but I'm just like, oh dude, now I'm gonna be like the old
Yeah,
guy.
you're like the old guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping there was gonna be a bunch of guys rolling in with like dad bods, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I found my spot. But the majority of them are all like 18 to 22, and then yeah, so, but that's cool. That's like part of it's all good. It's part of the process, like learning more about myself. So
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, that's pretty much my summer in a nutshell. It was honestly, it's been my favorite spring, my favorite summer, my favorite end of winter, my favorite like 7 months sequentially that I've perhaps ever had,
Wow,
which is a
that's
bold
huge.
statement, but yeah, it's been great. And there's one thing that has been coming back up for me. In the mornings, I'm finding that there's it's yeah, what how was I remember even you and I were talking a couple days ago when we hadn't talked in a while, and like you're saying, yeah, it sounds like there's some resistance, and there definitely is. Like there's some
Mhm.
resistance with some of my old, like the people that are still in my life that are like from like let's call it like the old Matt,
Mhm.
and I'm just finding that like where I am and then the conversations I have with them, it feels like there's like this energetic like pull back to either how I think they are thinking that am or I'm supposed to be or something, or I'm just like my ego is somewhat disappointed or judgmental over the fact that they haven't also developed, you know, uh,
Yeah.
alongside me or something like that. So I'm kind of reconciling that. Like there was with the band, with my band I'm playing in, and even just some of my family members of just like, yeah, just kind of getting frustrated with them. And I
Hmm.
think that's like it's an ego thing though. Like that's conditional, right? Which I'm trying to unlearn that whole like being conditional thing. So I'm definitely being conditional with some of like the more long-term friendships or relationships in my life. So
Yeah.
keeping an eye on that, but I'm feeling that. I feel that like it's not an anxiety, a little bit of a frustration, I think, a little bit of disappointment, which is not really mine. Such an ego thing, right? In my opinion, that's my take on it right now, anyways. Right? Is that I'm getting judgy because I've done this and they, they're either my perceptions are pulling me back or, so yeah, that's not the real me, but that is my ego still is chiming in at those times. So that's
Interesting.
been, yeah. And then that morning energy that I loved the morning up till recently, and now I think well, that's why I identified there was some residual guilt coming out of August from taking all these vacations.
Hmm.
Is that when I was doing my morning routine, I started feeling like a lot of pressure, like internal pressure. So my inner dialogue would started to turn into like I have to get this, and so it was morphing back into again sort of my old patterns. And I'm like, instead of you know, um, trying to pivot off of that, I'm spending time like, okay, what are you trying to tell me? Why do I need to?
Hmm.
Why do I have to get this done? Why,
Yeah.
so instead of like, being a safe spot for that energy too, and like collaborating with that as opposed to like, no, that's old. Get away from me. Like, this is new Matt. That's old Matt talking, right? So allowing all of it to be in there and being a safe spot for that energy to come up. And again, just being
Mhm.
unconditional versus conditional, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of
You know
how
what
everything's going.
I hear, and you can totally correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear a little bit is like you have maybe a sense that you have to like earn that time off.
I definitely do. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what would it take in your mind for you to like earn it? Like where does that even come from? Because I
There's a
almost am like the opposite. I'm like, I
yeah.
deserve this, I
Yeah.
deserve this lazy time.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I'm not quite there yet. I mean, every now and then I've had glimpses. I've had a few holidays in the past where like it was like after a store opening or something. It's like I've that I have earned it, right? Whereas yeah, this one I think it's good, like, because I had everything set up and automated, right? To like podcasts were going to come out regardless. It
Yeah.
was very hands off. So I think I was like almost there. Like I was like 80 or 90% there, but there's still like that inner, store manager, the inner regional manager that's just like, well, blah, 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 just like waiting. It's like, that's how I came up in my previous job. It's like,
Yeah.
celebrate something like for like half an afternoon or like an hour
Yeah.
or the last part of a budget meeting, and then it's like,
And
what's
you're
next?
on to the
On to the
next. Yeah.
next, right? Regardless, you just got through Christmas. You made like BP for the end of the year. Yeah, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Okay, so BP one's down. Okay, what are you guys going to be doing about training? It's just like one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. It's just that that mentality. So there's
Hmm.
still, I think it's still a bit of that. That's just it's turned way down, but it's still present. And you know what? That's and again, this is the change that I've had is like that's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm not trying to eliminate it or like go away, like suppress it. Everything is welcome, and everything I can collaborate with or learn from, or there's just I want
Yeah.
to just remove conditions and just you're all everybody's got an opinion. All the different voices in my head have opinion. That's all good. So we're just gonna like we'll all work together and make the final decision that's aligned with my values, right? So
Yeah. Well, and I think that all of those like people or all those voices, however you want to label them, like they
yeah,
all serve you in different ways, right? Like
100%. Yeah.
that that mentality in your previous role served you in a lot of ways. Like you're a hard worker, you're a high accomplisher, like you can get a lot out of that even in your current role. It's more so just like maybe reframing it in terms of you had said before, like I am allowed, right? Like I'm allowed
Hmm.
to take this break. I don't have to earn it because I earn it every day. Like there's no condition around earning it or not earning it. It's like at any point in time, you're in the driver's seat. You can decide if you want to take the break or not take the break.
Yeah.
But it's more so around like when those thoughts come up, like you should be doing something else. Like why?
Yes.
Why do you think that?
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. I did get behind the why, and it's like, okay, so for me, it's like usually if something comes up energetically or I have like a phrase, I'm like, okay, so what happens if I don't do that? So
Mhm.
if I don't accomplish, if I don't have all these podcasts posted to before I go on holidays, what's going to happen? Or
Mhm.
just kidding, that's very specific. So just even like just a generalization of it. So if I don't achieve fill in the blank, what does that say about myself? And okay, how did I word it? It came up. It came up in a really powerful way for me. I'm just trying to remember how I worded the question because it's like, oh yeah, so what happens if I don't do X? And I was like, a voice came up. I meditated on it a bit and it said, I'll be found out. And I'm like, okay, so be found out. That's interesting. So if I'm found out, like I'm worried that like if I don't keep this not facade, but this like idea of accomplishment as like this shield, then I get found out. And then if I'm found out, obviously there's a degree of imposter syndrome or something. Maybe not imposter syndrome, but just like my identity is tied in with this achiever energy. So,
Yeah.
and if I'm found out as not that, then I won't be significant because like significance has always been or an acknowledgement external has been a big thing for me. And then I feel that even below that, and this is just recent, is like underneath the insignificant significance thing is like a fear of rejection. So if I don't get this done, I will be rejected. So that's how I've kind of identified it. And when I identified that, I was like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see that, right? And I actually got asked by somebody, it's like, how did that come about? Like, was there a traumatic incident growing up or something? But it wasn't like a traumatic like incident where I was like, okay, I can point to that. It was like a accumulation, you know what I mean? Of like, so my father being like quite conditional and even my brother, like setting the tone, he's 2 years older than me, and we had the same elementary school teachers because it was a small
Mhm.
elementary school, right? So he was like, he's at like 95% and everything. He's like the ultimate student, right? Like
Mhm.
photographic memory and all this. And then so I remember when I would come in and I would get like, I'd do good, like B's and B pluses and the occasional A and whatever, right? But just the idea that I would go in and there would still be, and it was just like in good humor, but they're like, oh, you got some pretty big shoes to fill, right? So I would get this
Mhm.
impression that there was this idea that I also had to, achieve or accomplish a certain baseline as well in order to be noticed or taken seriously or whatever it was. So then I would also use, some of the people pleasing things, or like I was kind of like the not class clown, but like I was, a little more like happy go lucky. I was definitely the class clown in the family dynamic. Like I would
Mhm.
always try and get people laughing and use humor as a pattern disruption or something like that, right? So in the family dynamic. So yeah, I think that's kind of what it was. It was just an accumulation of this idea that I didn't quite measure up to, my brother and things of this nature. So yeah, and that made me somewhat fearful that I was going to, if I
Sure.
couldn't and didn't find a way to elsewise do it, there would be a rejection.
Yeah. No, I totally hear that. It's every time we talk, we always have like common threads. I don't know if it's like lines up in the universe or what, but
Yeah.
literally talking with, yeah, somebody else about the idea or like the fear of rejection.
Mm.
And what I had said to them, and I don't know how, I probably will butcher this every time, but what I had said to them was, in my mind, rejection doesn't exist where acceptance persists. And so,
Mm.
like, there is no room for you to reject me if I accept myself.
Yeah.
Um, and even I had to do a lot of work around that, in terms of like job rejection, family rejection, romantic rejection, like whatever my perception of rejection was.
Hmm.
Um, And not everybody agrees with that concept, and it's I think it's yours to take and like mull over. But when we're like really doing that like deep rooted work, I feel like that comes up a lot, like with our perception of rejection. Just something,
Yeah.
it's food for thought.
No, I really like that quote actually, like the whole yeah. So it's like if what rejection can't live where acceptance persists or something along those lines. Is it? Yeah.
You'll have to play it back. I don't know.
Yeah. I already forget. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's the summary of it, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. Yeah, yeah, and that's and that is the current journey that I'm on. Right, is like realizing all these like patterns that I took on without even really knowing it, or just maybe I did know it, but I never stopped to go, okay, is this actually serving me? Right.
Yeah.
So getting to that stage and now realizing, there is room for like unconditional love, but even that, like that is a process, right? That's
Oh,
going to take
yeah.
me a while to, fully believe that and experientially prove that to myself, right? Because I can say that and feel it and have that intention, but until I have some like actual like experiential learning or things that I can go, okay, remember when I felt that? Like, you know what I mean? How it can kind of show up as like an energy in my body as
Yeah.
opposed to just like mentally being like, okay, yeah, that's what I got to do. And how to do that is a 5-step you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
getting out of that whole thing, right? So,
And like
um,
removing the timeline on it, right? Like, because I
100%.
feel like just society in general has this like hurry up and get there
Yes.
mentality, right?
Yeah.
Want to lose the 10 pounds in a month, want to
Yeah.
hit this career milestone in by this year. And it's
Yeah.
like just removing any expectations of a deadline around it
Definitely.
and just knowing that we're committed to like continual kind of growth around that.
Yeah. No real finish line, right? The
Yeah.
idea is like lifelong learning. It's like these things that will just the whole idea is just to continue to expand with no,
Mm.
oh, I gotta expand to like level 5 by
Yeah.
the next
Then
3
I'm
months
good.
from right. Yeah, then yeah, exactly. Then back to that whole thing. Then I'm good, right? Then I can relax, right?
Yeah.
And enjoy life finally, right? Yeah, totally. No, that's yeah, great stuff. Great stuff.
That's the
Yeah,
perfect place to wrap up. We
I'm
just went
thinking
full
so.
circle.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I love it. Yeah, sounds great. Well, really good to check in with you again. Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, I guess we'll kind of see how the what the future goes. But now everything's getting back into school mode and every other thing. So the traveling plans are more or less gone on my side of things. I imagine they are for you as well. So
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
you'll
We'll
do
just
some more.
see how like the seasons unfold.
Totally. Yeah. Right on. Awesome. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Matt.